Focus on Headline. And let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. And for this, joining us in the studio, we have our reporters, Kwon-soa and Choi-ji-hee. Guys, welcome back.
Hi, guys.
You guys have a good Chuseok holiday?
Sure.
I mean, it's like the first normal, almost normal Chuseok since the pandemic, right? But
Right.
today really doesn't feel like Tuesday. I almost said today's Monday's edition of Korea now. But it's good to see you guys back and safe here. Guys, we're going to start things off with President Yoon Suk-yeol. He's going to be making a week-long trip abroad. This is going to take him to the UK, the US, and Canada as well. So start us off with President Yoon's overseas schedule and give us an overview of what we can expect at each stop.
Sure. So this overseas trip is going to be from the 18th of September, so starting on Sunday for 7 days. The presidential office revealed the schedule on Monday, which will first take President Yoon Suk-yeol to Britain to attend the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, who passed away on the 8th of this month last week. The funeral will be on the 19th. And so in London, and then President Yoon will fly to the U.S., New York, to attend the UN General Assembly on the 20th, and he'll also have other schedules there until the 22nd, and the last leg of his trip is Canada on the 23rd, where the president is to hold a bilateral summit with his Canadian counterpart, Justin Trudeau. Now, National Security Advisor Kim Sung-han during a briefing said the purpose of the overseas trip is to strengthen solidarity with partner nations that share same core values and to expand the foundation of economic diplomacy. So let's go into a bit more of the details of each destination. First, the president's attendance at the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II and the significance of this. President Yoon will express his deep condolences over her passing to the royal family as well as the British people. And according to his security advisor, Kim, the decision Yoon made to make this visit in person is not only based on the important historic relationship between South Korea and Britain, but also the duties and achievements the Queen Elizabeth II has made throughout her life, and also the what South Koreans here are feeling for the Queen as well. So all of this is the reason for why Yoon is making this visit in person. And it is, in fact, the first time since 2015 that a sitting South Korean president is attending a funeral of a head of state level figure in person. Former President Park Geun-hye had made a visit to Singapore for late Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. And before that, late President Kim Dae-jung attended late Japanese Prime Minister Keijo Obuchi's funeral. So it is pretty rare. And also, as heads of other states are gathering for the funeral, Kim stressed that this can also be an opportunity for the international community to seek solidarity. That's also why, although it's a bit weird, this term, but there is also that term funeral diplomacy.
Yeah.
So it's also going to be for the good of some leaders to get together on this occasion.
That's right. And of course, the trip to the UK was kind of a sudden addition to President Yoon's September schedule abroad. Now, let's talk about his visit to the United States and Canada as well. So what details can you tell us on that?
Right. So let's start with President Yoon Suk-yeol's attendance at the General Assembly in New York. It's President Yoon's first time taking part in the assembly, and he's to hold a keynote speech on the first day, the 20th. The presidential office said the global society is at a watershed moment, which is also the theme of the General Assembly this year, a watershed moment. Transformative solutions to interlocking challenges. So based on which the South Korean leader in his speech is to deliver South Korea's role for this cause. But also what we're expecting, of course, is the South Korean government's policies regarding North Korea. And the speech may have more details on President Yoon's so-called audacious initiative that offers North Korea economic aid in exchange for steps on denuclearization. During the remaining time in New York, the president is predicted to have bilateral summits with other leaders, a one-on-one with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and also he is to meet with South Korean residents there. With whom exactly President Yoon will hold sideline summits is not all set, but it's expected to be 3 or 4 leaders. But there are talks that a bilateral with U.S. President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, respectively, is being set up. Now, regarding a possible Seoul Tokyo summit, a senior presidential official reportedly said that it's not for sure whether this is going to be an official bilateral summit or whether it's going to be a so-called pull-aside, an unofficial meeting where they might have just a short encounter. However, this official did say when everything's set up, they are going to let the public know. Now, finally, let's talk about Canada. You might wonder why President Yoon is meeting with his Canadian counterpart. It's not only because of the flight distance, because it's not too far away from the U.S., but South Korea and Canada are actually celebrating 60 years of diplomatic ties next year, and the two have already had the chance to talk to each other in person in June on the sidelines of the NATO summit in Spain. Canada is South Korea's second largest mineral exporter, which is needed for core materials for secondary batteries.
There you have it.
And National Security Advisor Kim Song-han said President Yoon's visit to Canada will serve as an opportunity for building supply chain stability and resilience and strengthening bilateral economic ties.
Yeah, it's going to get interesting. Again, I think the big focus here is going to be a potential summit. Number one, with President Joe Biden, right? I think it's important because of all the Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, that's been the big controversy these days. South Korea has been calling on, Washington to kind of give South Korea an exemption on that. They've also pulled the Chorus FTA on it, saying, listen, I mean, we have this Chorus FTA on it. How can you tag us for these, not give us the tax exemptions because it's not built in North America or in the United States. There's even companies like Hyundai, LG Energy Solution, Kia. They're all saying, listen, give us an exemption until we've built our plants in the United States at least. Give us a grace period. And maybe this is something that if the two leaders meet, could discuss. But I think if finally there's a Seoul Tokyo summit, I think that's going to be quite an interesting one. Because from what I understand, the last time they kind of met, it was just kind of a hello, right? There was no talks in place. So whether or not that's going to happen is going to be quite interesting. All right, so this is not the very first overseas trip for President Yoon. If you guys remember, our listeners, President Yoon did take part in the NATO summit, right? And that was an important one because President Yoon became the first South Korean president to take part in the NATO summit. But Chi, first and foremost, remind us about his first overseas trip. How was it at the NATO summit and so forth?
Right. So if we take a look at the evaluations regarding President Yoon's participation in the NATO summit, people had said that it was quite successful. He had made a pretty successful international debut and raised his status by showing off his presence there and standing shoulder to shoulder with some of the world's leaders of major countries. And in particular, he was highly praised for abandoning the indecisive or ambiguous stance that was taken by the previous government, which had maintained ambiguity between the U.S. and China, and he chose instead the Western-led value of solidarity. But then opponents had said regarding this comment, this rather positive comment, some say that the problem starts from now because how the stance that President Yoon had taken there could affect Korea's relationship with China as well as Russia, and this was reminded by the Time magazine. It had warned that South Korea's participation in NATO would push back relations with Russia and China. And the Korean government, although it's good that they're trying to keep a balance between its relations with China and the U.S., it should still be concerned about future, how the relations will go with China and Russia. And also, there were also praises about the First Lady's outfit. This is just quite some rather lighter comments regarding the NATO summit, but there were divided opinion regarding the participation of the First Lady in the NATO summit as well, and especially regarding how some of the attire that she was wearing during the days of visit in Spain, etc. Yes, and yeah.
Yeah, and then they also, had pictures. I remember seeing pictures of the President Yoon and the First Lady Kim Gun-hee kind of, was it the ice cream date I think they had, right? They were enjoying a time at the park, I think it was, which showed kind of like how do I put this? Like the average Joe look, right? And everyone kind of loves that. Everyone kind of goes, because he's the president, she's the first lady. There's this big border between us, normal people, and the president. But showing images like this, I'm sure, look good. But I mean, that was the other thing, right? There was like the NATO summit showed solidarity between South Korea showed support for the solidarity with the West, right? But then again, the unfortunate thing is kind of the U.S. with their inflation reduction kind of ruining this whole. What happened to the solidarity, right? That's kind of the unfortunate thing. So you had something to say?
Oh yeah, maybe I should have actually mentioned that the First Lady will embark on the trip with Yoon throughout the entire schedule, although details have not been revealed.
Right.
Well, based on the comments regarding the NATO summit, though, I also want to add some of my expectations, what I would like to see during the next kind of international stage of President Yoon. Well, based on these comments, I mean, the upcoming venue, the occasion will be very important because there's a lot of things that we should discuss. And like Soa said, he'll be talking about the audacious initiative in detail. And I believe this whole visit will focus on what's dubbed value diplomacy. And he should be reminded that stages such as these are really battlefields without weapons, they say. So it shouldn't just be superficial, but he should be able to. It's not just a one-time event. And he should be able to deliver the stances of Korea and make sure to deliver the national interest and protect it on important stages like these.
Every leader who, for example, takes part in the UN General Assembly, there's a lot of pressure on them to make their presence known, right? You can't be like, oh, yeah, I think he was there. Or, yeah, I think I've heard something. I think I met. No, they need to make an impact on that global stage.
And it's going to be difficult to make a bigger impact than BTS at the UN.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if President Yoon makes a music video like BTS, maybe that'll be quite an impactful thing like BTS. But so speaking of which, what about yourself? What do you think is going to be the highlight of President Yoon's next overseas trips? And also, what are the experts' expectations as well?
Well, first off, I think if a meeting between President Yoon Suk-yeol and his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida does happen, then I think that's going to be the highlight for South Korea, because it's been really years and years that the two leaders of these two countries really speak together in person. And we just recently had, was it the defense ministers that got together between Seoul and Tokyo? That's when there were already expectations, speculations that a summit could soon happen. And I think it is the best chance to do this during the UN General Assembly.
What's higher on the agenda, though? President Yoon meeting up with Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and possibly talking about improved bilateral ties between Seoul and Tokyo, or President Yoon meeting up with Joe Biden and possibly resolving the whole fiasco with the Inflation Reduction Act?
Good question. Actually, an official, I think, on anonymity did say that President Yoon is expected to strongly express South Korea's position on the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, if he does get to meet with Biden. And he or she did mention Washington seems to be looking closely into this matter. And given its importance to the South Korean industry, this issue is anticipated to be discussed during a meeting between Yoon and Biden. So we will have to see what kind of, if it's really going to be an extensive meeting between Yoon and Biden, because I also see the chance that President Yoon might have a more extensive meeting with his Japanese counterpart, because with Biden he already met. So maybe the meeting with Biden could be a slightly unofficial, just really sideline summit so that they do not really have to discuss this matter in a, strong way. But, I mean, it would be better for President Yoon to really express his opinion on this.
No,
matter.
I think it's gonna. I think if he really, he needs to. First of all, I think he needs to talk to President Joe Biden, and he needs to strongly appeal the recent IRA, the U.S.-led IRA, and I think that itself is going to show the leadership of President Yoon on a global stage, not just necessarily domestic level, but it does. Obviously, I mean, that's because the appeal is going to help us, the economy here in South Korea, because it impacts all the major automobile companies here in South Korea, right? But I think what he does, if he's able to really make a strong appeal, and let's say he even gets to the part where South Korea gets an exemption, oh my goodness, his approval ratings are going to skyrocket is what's going to happen. But nevertheless, so we'll continue on.
Sure. I mean, as you just mentioned on the global stage, what's also really important is the keynote speech that President Yoon is going to make. So, and I think this time around, many countries will be focusing on a more global level of issues. For instance, the war in Ukraine, or some issues that everyone has to, put their attention on. But for South Korea, it was majorly the North Korea issue that they have been addressing during the UN speech. And I would really want to see how President Yoon is going to mention his policies regarding North Korea, because the last time he mentioned this so-called audacious policy, that was back in August. But after that, we saw North Korea's response.
Yeah.
And based on that response, I want to see how this message might have changed.
Yeah, it can't be the same initiative, the same outline, the same format of everything that he said, because that's already been rejected by North Korea.
Or maybe he will actually just emphasize it again and just ignore North Korea's recent strong response. And we'll also have to see at what kind of level North Korea will have its official at the meeting too. So that's going to be interesting as well.
I mean, he can ignore what North Korea says about the audacious initiative, but North Korea is also ignoring the plan, the offer as well, and you're not going to go anywhere, right? I think this is going to be an interesting. You're right. But yeah, personally for me, I think the two things that I'm looking for is really a sit down with Biden to work out the whole IRA thing, and then if there is like a tweak to the audacious initiative, and we could call it, I don't know, 2.0 or something like that. Really keen on hearing about that as well. Again, like we said, Yoon's administration, the diplomatic capability is really going to be put to the test. But also with the leaders from two rivaling countries, China and the U.S., expected to visit the country within this month to hold talks with the South Korean president. Gee, let's get more on this.
Sure. So it seems that South Korea will turn into a diplomatic battlefield, they say, between the United States and China, because high-ranking Chinese official Lee Jung-jae plans to arrive in Seoul on the 15th, which is Thursday this week, for a 3-day trip with a large-scale government delegation. Now, Lee is China's third-ranked official and chief of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress, and also U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will visit Seoul on the 29th of this month. Now, Harris is scheduled to visit Korea after attending the state funeral for former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the 27th, and this marks the first time a U.S. Vice President will visit South Korea in over 4 years. Now, former Vice President Mike Pence attended the opening ceremony of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics back in 2018. And it also comes 4 months after President Joe Biden visited the country in May. And Harris's husband, U.S. Second Gentleman Douglas Emhoff, had visited earlier as well to attend President Yoon's inauguration ceremony. Now, while the U.S. and China are in conflict with each other over multiple issues, including the Taiwan matter, the Chip 4 alliance, and human rights issues in Xinjiang, the South Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the presidential office are also on alert as the big names in the U.S. and China are planning to visit the country one after another. In particular, the presidential office had come under controversy over the so-called negligence in protocol. That's a direct translation from a Korean expression for when the U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Korea back in August. Yeah, so a lack of protocol during Pelosi's visit had been criticized as being disrespectful toward her. And based on this incident, special attention is expected to be paid to the vice president's visit. And according to the presidential office, Yoon and Harris plan to exchange views on matters. They're going to meet and exchange views on matters of mutual interest, including ways to strengthen Seoul-Washington relations, the North Korea issue, economic security, and other key regional and international issues. And concerns surrounding the Inflation Reduction Act, of course, are also expected to be discussed during the occasion. Meanwhile, it seems that China will also pay much attention to Lee Jung-jae's visit to South Korea, who had been invited by National Assembly Speaker Kim Jin-pyo. Lee will be visiting with a group of 66 delegates. That's a huge group.
Wow.
And this will be the first time in 7 years for the chief of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of China to visit South Korea.
So here is the thing, right? So you're seeing China on one hand kind of sending their third highest ranking official in, and they do understand that the U.S. has been trying to pry South Korea from the ties, the trade ties, diplomatic ties and so forth that Seoul and Beijing had. And so that's why they're sending a huge delegation. It's a kind of a way of them going, hey, let's make things better, right? Whereas, again, I keep mentioning the IRA, which kind of tearing apart Seoul and Washington for obvious reasons here. And so I'm pretty sure when Kamala Harris does arrive here in South Korea, this is going to be one of the main topics to be discussed. Man, that IRA, goodness, I'm sure we're going to be talking about that for months and months. We're going to move on to North Korea because we've been talking about, I guess this is the big question, and we've been talking about this months, this entire year right now. We're approaching the tail end of 2022, believe it or not. We've been talking about when is North Korea going to be firing their 7th nuclear test. We're hoping it never happens, but the consensus is going to happen. Now there are suspicions that North Korea is continuing its operation of the uranium enrichment facility and is also conducting constructions there as well. So let's get the details of this.
Right. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the United Nations nuclear watchdog, made this assessment. Rafael Mariano Grossi, Director General of the IAEA, said on Monday during a meeting in Vienna that North Korea has operated and expanded its key uranium enrichment facility at the Yongbyon nuclear complex. With that, renewing earlier assessments of the North getting ready for a 7th nuclear test, as you said, SJ. The agency seems to have detected multiple indications that suggest North Korea seeking to produce plutonium and uranium required to build nuclear weapons and conduct a test. According to the IAEA chief, the centrifuge enrichment facility has been expanded. That's a part of the uranium enrichment plant where weapons-grade uranium is produced. The centrifuge enrichment facility, Grossi says, is now externally complete, but he did not elaborate on the purpose or impact of the upgrade. These developments, however, do appear to be in line with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's recent public message in which he emphasized North Korea has no interest in negotiating on denuclearization. Grossi, in his statement, made clear that the continuation of Pyongyang's nuclear program is a clear violation of UNSC resolutions and that it's deeply regrettable. And briefly, another North Korea-related issue. Even following the Chuseok holidays, North Korean officials remained silent on South Korea's recent proposal to restart dialogue on reunions for families separated by the Korean War. The two Koreas held their regular phone calls via the liaison office, but there was no response on the issue.
Yeah, and I just read this article earlier this morning. There's also ongoing indications of activities at other complexes, this including the Pyeongsan uranium mine and concentration plant. So, I mean, all these activities, right? They might be going, well, I mean, this is always happening, no? But, I mean, there's also... they're rebuilding things, and all signs point to a possible nuclear. It's just a matter of Kim Jong-un, I think, going, all right, we're going to give it the get-go now. I think they're still maybe waiting for last-minute Hail Mary offer from, let's say, like, South Korea or the United States. But we're not getting any of that so far. In the meantime, South Korea's National Assembly Speaker Kim Jin-pyo was on his visit to Spain, met with the leaders of Spain's Congress of Deputies in Madrid on Monday local time. This was the first official visit by South Korean speaker to the country in more than a decade. So, Chia, let's get more details of the meeting.
Right. So National Assembly Speaker Kim Jin-pyo held a 70-minute-long meeting with Marechal Batet Lamana, president of the Spanish Congress, and discussed ways to enhance economic cooperation between the two countries. Now, the meeting came as part of efforts to boost parliamentary cooperation between the two states after Seoul and Madrid agreed to elevate their bilateral relationship to a strategic partnership last year. And this is the first official visit, like you said, by a South Korean speaker to Spain in 14 years. And during the meeting, noting that the two countries have many similarities, Kim suggested they should expand joint business projects in the field of construction and infrastructure in regions like the Middle East, Latin America, and Asia. And Batet highlighted South Korea's competence in the digital transition and eco-friendly areas, which Spain is moving to prioritize. And Kim said there's ample room for cooperation and promised parliamentary support for such agendas. Now, the South Korean speaker asked for Spain's support for South Korea's bid to host the 2030 World Expo in the southeastern port city of Busan. And Batet said she understands that Busan is well prepared for the event and wishes for a successful bid. Now, Speaker Kim will conclude his 7-day trip to Spain and Portugal by meeting Ander Gil Garcia, president of the Senate, to discuss cooperation in renewable energy and construction exports as well. And then he'll be flying to Portugal, and he plans to meet with Portuguese Assembly Speaker Augusto Santos Silva to propose ways of expanding cooperation in the fields of EV batteries and the marine industry. Kim will also meet with overseas Koreans living in Portugal in celebration of the 50th anniversary of Korean immigrants in Portugal. And this visit is Kim's second overseas visit since taking office in July. Last month, he had visited Poland and Romania to promote arms exports there.
I just find that very interesting. 50-year anniversary of Korean immigrants in Portugal. Like, what sparked the move to Portugal for the first immigrants there? I mean, it's just out of curiosity, right? Guys, we're going to move on to some entertainment news for it. We haven't had, light news in, the longest time, guys. We're going to talk about Squid Game, and it's worth talking about this because South Korea's phenomenal Netflix drama won Best Actor and Best Director at the 2022 Emmys, breaking all sorts of records here. So fill us in on this.
Yes, Squid Game, South Korea's Netflix drama, made history at the prestigious Emmy Awards, becoming the first non-English TV series to win 2 major trophies at the U.S. TV celebrations event. Why don't we give Squid Game a big hand? I think they deserve it.
I have never heard so excited reporting on a news.
We always talk about the bad economy.
Yes. I completely agree.
Difficult diplomatic issues.
We needed this break. I think we deserve applause for this. No, we deserve. Really, this is a great break. But nevertheless, go ahead.
Sure. So director Hwang Dong-hyuk received the prize of Outstanding Directing and Writing for the series' first episode, Red Light, Green Light. And I have to mention, they give out the prizes by evaluating the director by episode. That's interesting. And that's why some series actually have different directors for different episodes.
You're right. Yeah,
in this case, we have the same director, I guess. And actor Lee Jung-jae won the prize for Outstanding Lead Actor. Now, both are the first Koreans, or in fact Asians, and first director and actor of a non-English series to take home these titles. Now, let me read out some parts of their acceptance speeches. Director Hwang Dong-hyuk said, "I truly hope Squid Game won't be the last non-English series to be here at the Emmys, and I truly hope this won't be my last Emmy either." And actor Lee Jung-jae said, "Thank you to director Hwang for making realistic problem we all face come to life so creatively on the screen with a great script and amazing visuals. Realistic problems that we all face. I won't go into the details. I guess everyone knows the plot of Squid Game. But what I also want to mention is that Squid Game has now gained a total of 6 awards following the 4 it got at the Creative Arts Emmys that were held last week. And that was for Outstanding Guest Actress in a Drama Series, Outstanding Special Visual Effects in a Single Episode, Outstanding Stunt Performance, and Outstanding Production Design for a Narrative Contemporary Program. So Squid Game won these 6 awards and was nominated for 14 categories. What Squid Game did not win is the prize for a Best Drama Series, and that was Succession that has received that award. And it was interesting how director Hwang has been joking about how he has been losing to Succession at every award ceremony so far. And then when the presenter said so when he heard the S, he was kind of raising up because it might be Squid Game, but then again they said Succession, so he sat down again is what he says. But he did mention he wants to come back to the Emmys and win the Best Drama Series for season 2 of Squid Game, and then take stage with all the cast and crew members. So I'm really looking forward to season 2. And again, congratulations.
Did you guys watch Squid Game?
Of course.
You watched it? Man, am I the only one that didn't?
Didn't?
I watched the award-winning Red Light, Green Light episode.
Oh, the first
watched
episode.
that.
You
Okay.
should watch the entire series.
And I
SJ.
watched the last episode.
Oh.
And so I know how it starts and I know how it ends.
Okay, at
It's
least.
the most important thing. So I heard great things about it. I just like
취향 존중.
no
What's
because
that in English?
So you just like you were
Respect your
saying how
taste.
we've been covering so much dark news. I've just kind of been avoiding very dark shows, like dark dramas, like serious stuff, and I just go for like the lighthearted ones.
It is
I
dark,
agree.
but it's also bright and funny, and I just watch the whole series next time.
There's like 455 people who get killed on that show. I don't know what's
Bright and funny.
I don't know how it's bright and funny about 455 people dying and one person surviving. But I do understand what you mean. Let's talk economy instead. South Korea is continuing to see a widening trade deficit here. If the trend continues throughout the month, the country will set a record 25 years of recording a trade deficit for 6 straight months. Gee, we're going to go back into the dark news here. Let's talk about this.
Right. So the country's exports fell 16.6% on year in the first 10 days of September. And according to the Korea Customs Service data, the country's outbound shipments stood at 16.25 billion US dollars in this period, compared with $19.48 billion a year earlier. And imports also went down 10.9% on year to $18.69 billion during the cited period. And this resulted in a trade deficit of $2.44 billion. And so it's larger than the $1.48 billion logged in the same period a year earlier. And the fall is due mainly to fewer working days over the Chuseok holiday, which started on Friday and ran through Monday. And as a result, the number of working days during this period came to 6.5 days, whereas the number of working days last year during the same period was 8.5 days. And the daily exports, however, grew 9% on year, and the average per day imports jumped 16.6% on year during the cited period. And by sector, exports of semiconductors, which is a major backbone of the country's trade, grew 7.9% compared to a year ago. However, last month, the semiconductor exports, if you remember, fell for the first time in 26 months. And the outbound shipment of petroleum products also increased 11.7% year on year. And in contrast, however, exports of cars, auto parts, and steel products all fell by over 10% and even 36% for the steel products, respectively. And imports of crude oil rose 15.7% to $3.28 billion, and those of gas spiked 92.3% to $2.16 billion during the cited period.
Got some optimistic news this time on the country's economy. South Korean shares after the Chuseok holiday spiked by more than 3% on this Tuesday. So update us on the latest figures.
Sure. So South Korean stocks traded higher this Tuesday. The benchmark Kospi rose 65.26 points or 2.74% to 2,449.54. Analysts say there is some optimism in the air with the U.S. August Consumer Price Index coming up, and also the Fed expected to continue its aggressive monetary tightening. And this expectation, according to experts, has already been reflected in the market. Meanwhile, the expectations on the Fed continuing its tightening is because there is a high probability of a 75 basis point rate hike. And this probability is at 93%. The local currency, meanwhile, ended at 1,373.61 against the U.S. dollar, up 7.21 from Thursday's close. Thursday because, of course, the Chuseok holiday started on Friday.
Very quickly, the U.S. government began to formally emphasize domestic research and manufacturing in the field of biotechnology, this including, of course, biopharmaceuticals. The move does come against the recent Inflation Reduction that has, again, as I mentioned before, raised concerns regarding possible damage to South Korean automakers. Ji, quickly fill us in on this.
Right. So U.S. President Joe Biden launched a new initiative to encourage biotech production as well as research in the U.S. as part of the latest move by the White House to boost domestic industries. In fact, U.S. President Joe Biden on Monday signed an executive order implementing this initiative, and they're going to hold a Democratic President's Administration summit on Wednesday to announce new investments and the details regarding this initiative. But the exact amount of the funding is yet to be known. And the new initiative, just like the IRA, intends to reduce the U.S. economy's reliance on overseas products. And with this recent move by the U.S., the Korean government is keeping close eyes on how this will affect the Korean bio industry as well. And there are concerns that the U.S. policy may pour cold water while intensive investment is being made to foster the country's biohealth industry. And this is being pushed as a national core strategic business. And in particular, because the U.S. is emphasizing domestic production even in the biotech industry, experts forecast that such a stance could cause a setback in the contract production of pharmaceuticals that are produced within the country. Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see what the details will be like.
And this is the other sector that South Korea has been really pushing to really improve, right? The biopharmaceutical sector. They were trying to be the hub, for vaccine hub in this area. And I mean, it's messed up. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for your report and your insights on these issues. It's good to see you guys back from the Chuseok holiday. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys again.
See you.
See you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang radio application or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.